Cool. So thanks, guys, for joining. Yeah, we're at time. So we're here with a great panel. We're going to talk about connected field service, and out there, and the guys will get into it in a lot more detail. You've heard enough from me today. I'm just going to do a quick intro. I'll come back in at the end, and we'll kind of talk about how the architecture comes together. And this one's a little different because we wanted to get into a little bit this notion of a multi-tenant edge. This concept that if we can get more of a kind of open foundation, at the root, more consistent, data infrastructure, whatnot, or security and management, of course, and that's of course our component. We can get to this notion of multi-tenant edge, to where you have data coming from, in this case, say a machine, it's some sort of connected system out there, and you want to feed that data to multiple different destinations. And one way to do it is you send all the data to one cloud, and then you fan it out from there. Another way to do it is you literally have a multi-tenant edge. You have different data stacks running on common infrastructure, and you fan it out to wherever it may be. So, that could be, as the guys will talk about, it could be a service provider, it could be internal to your organization. It doesn't all have to be the cloud. It could be some on-prem. And so it's just that notion of decoupling, the edge from the cloud the moment data is created, and then all permutations work in between. So, the guys will explain it a little bit more, but first let's get into, kind of who's here. So with that, I'll hand it off, and we'll just go in order. Michaela, if you'd like to start from a Crosser standpoint, and then we're just going to go through maybe a quick 30-second intro on what you guys do, and then you'll dive a lot more into your offer.
Yep. So hi everyone, I'm Michael Samuelson from Crosser. And Crosser provides a low-code edge analytics and integration platform for industrial IoT use cases. We're a Swedish company, and I'm based in Stockholm. I'll tell you more about Crosser in a bit.
All right, going next, Aaron Alsbrook, CTO and founder at ClearBlade. ClearBlade is an edge platform. We allow for doing some integrations into the enterprise across multiple layers of the edge continuum. So very much a part of how do we work and coexist with others in the edge stack and share data so that we get solutions built rapidly.
And Jags?
Thank you. Jags Kandasamy, founder, CEO of LatentAI. We are the guys that help you build your AI models for the edge continuum, right from the sensor all the way up to the edge of the network. Makes sense.
Last but not least, Mike.
Hey everyone, Mike Berryman. I'm the Director of Technical Services and Solutions at Advantech. Advantech is a manufacturer of hardware and software solutions focused on automation and industrial IoT.
Cool. Yeah, great. No, it's great to have you guys here. And I was just asking if we're doing the networking thing at the end. You can go to that, and it's like sort of like Russian roulette of meeting people. And it made me think of it because I met Jags through the networking thing in Hopin. I was on one of Stacey Higginbotham's panels a couple weeks ago, a month or so ago, and you click a button and it says I'm ready to meet somebody, and just randomly puts you on, and we hit it off. We're like, wait, get your contact information before you get shoved off. I think you get like 3 minutes or something. So anyway, so I think we're going to be doing that. So head over to the networking thing after this. Actually, after this, we have the closing session, and then head over if you so choose. Just be ready to be on camera, and you might meet somebody new, or you might meet someone that you just have nothing in common with. But either way, that's the fun of it. So as we get into it, not going to spend a lot of time on this. We're going to come back to this at the tail end. But this is the notion of edge infrastructure. Advantech provides that foundation. We're all about just orchestrating, workloads, your choice of apps. We're partnering widely, as you can see throughout today. One thing I'll stress: this is just one thing that all of the partners here can do. I mean, we wanted to talk about a story, make it tangible. They'll walk through some of the things that they can do as well, and we'll kind of reiterate that at the end. And we'll come back to this again, like I said, have a little mini panel within the webinar. So with that, I'll hand it off to Mikhail with Crosser, and just tell me the advanced slides when you're ready.
Thanks, Jason, for that nice intro. So how does Crosser fit into the ZEDEDA ecosystem? Well, Crosser processes data close to the data sources. We can stay on the first slide.
Yeah, sorry, operator error. I'm gonna drop off just so you know, and then but I'll be listening and advancing. I can hear you, okay? But I'll be back towards the end.
Okay, so the previous slide, please. previous. Perfect.
Greater error. All right, go ahead. Sorry.
So Crosser processes data close to the data sources. Crosser is really born in the crossroad of OT and IT and provides a low-code analytics and integration platform for machine data, enterprise data, and cloud data, which enables a long list of use cases and simplifies the journey towards Industry 4.0. So looking at this illustration, the data is moving from left to right in this picture. So to the left, starting with the connected equipment and machines where data is generated, going right, the insights and the useful data is delivered to relevant destinations, either in the cloud or to on-premise systems. Crosser sits in the middle of this data flow, processing data and applying any type of logic. Could be using LatentAI, for example. And Crosser is usually deployed on-premise, many times on a gateway or industrial PC. Could be an Advantech gateway, maybe with ZEDEDA multi-tenant edge. The Crosser edge node is the runtime where all the data processing is done. And the edge nodes are managed in the Crosser cloud. This is where you define what should happen in the edge, as well as monitor and orchestrate large deployments of edge nodes. And the Crosser solution is an enterprise-grade platform built for global scalability. Next, please. So Industry 4.0 is all about gaining more value out of the current production processes. Different customers have different needs and drivers for their Industry 4.0 projects. But at the end, business drivers, organizational drivers, and technical drivers all boil down to the fact that they need to shorten time to value for all their initiatives. So our customers tell us that their business drivers are mostly focused on cost savings for all the stages in their IoT projects, from start to the finish line and the maintenance that comes over time. Our customers also say that they need something to simplify the cooperation and innovation between traditional departments, bridging silos and skills gaps, bringing OT, IT, and data science together. And of course, there are technical drivers mentioned by our customers. They turn to Crosser to get their custom code out to the assets in a secure and simplified way. And they endorse the modular approach for giving them such flexibility in their projects. Overall, Crosser is representing a kind of software glue between assets and systems and between departments and people. This optimization of the IoT innovation process brings OT, IT, and data science together in one place, in one solution, radically simplifying their IoT initiative. Next, please. So if we take a little look under the hood of our solution, you will see that Crosser platform is built with a drag and drop user interface. Basically, we have taken all the functionality that you could want to use in the edge processing and turned each functionality into a small module. These modules fit together similar to pieces of Lego. So the library or our library of modules can be viewed as a big box of Lego where all the modules can be combined as you like to support the use case at hand. Looking at in this picture at the modules on the left, this is an example data flow. They connect the modules to the left, they connect to the data sources, which can be PLCs, sensors, and other sources of data with different data formats. The three modules on the right are connectors to relevant destinations of the actionable insights and process data, which can be the public cloud or any on-premise system like ERP systems and trigger messages or actions. The modules in the middle are used to transform data and applying algorithms, machine learning, AI, and other types of logic. So the left modules represent the OT side. The right modules represent the IT side, and the middle modules is where you implement the data science. So here we have a powerful tool highly appreciated by our customers for the 3 domains to work efficiently together. So to summarize, Crosser is born in the crossroads of OT and IT and provides a low-code analytics and integration platform for machine data, enterprise data, cloud data, and enables a long list of use cases and simplifies the journey towards Industry 4.0. So, handing it over to Aaron.
All right, great, thank you. So I'll dive in quickly about the ClearBlade Edge and what we are doing in this space and how we work with Crosser and how we work with Latent and how we run on Advantech. I'll put it specifically today in the idea of field service. So if you can go to the next slide for me, Jason. We've been hearing all day long about the different layers of edge and how there's the very small micro edge, there's the data center edge, all along the way. ClearBlade software is designed to work across this continuum that allows us to ingest it, organize it, process it, work with tools that have the ability to do low-code, rapid business rules, but we give you the ability to work across that entire ecosystem of how you might want to communicate that data. And that's important when you think about field service. Field service means you have people that are interacting with machines in the truck right at the mine. The mine may have centralization of an edge of its own little location. That data may be rolling up to a near data center edge in a rural location, ultimately rolling back to an enterprise system or enterprise on-premise operation. So this application has to live across the entire overall life cycle of this edge, and ClearBlade helps connect that and move that information across it all for that application layer, so as the data can move us in the right spot and the application can run. Next slide. So really what happens is we're ultimately trying to take, actually, if you can go back one for me, I'll talk to the build. Ultimately, we're trying to get this information to the places that it matters, right? There's lots of cool information we can do with the edge and things we can do, but ultimately we need to fill our data lakes, we need to work with our enterprise systems, we need to open field service tickets, and we need to let people see the ability to see it in the right way. So can Crosser feed into ClearBlade? Absolutely. We can integrate data back and forth for each other so that we can provide the best of value. And that's really what we're trying to show here, is the fact that us as tools can go and complement one another. Next slide. Of course, there's things that have to happen inside that edge. This is just sort of showing similar to what we saw before. There's ingression, there's southbound information that's coming up. There's the ability to persist, to stream, to move it around, and then ultimately do this across each one of those layers of that edge stack. And then in the northbound side, we always have to think about integrations. When we think about AI, there's certainly training tools that have to happen in certain places with big data, and there's execution tools that can happen back and forth at lower levels. And so ClearBlade is all about how do we integrate these different tools so that we have the right tool to solve the right problem, and we sit in the middle there with the core elements of that application stack. Last slide. And so then specifically when you think about field service and where are we doing it in field service, right? We're doing it with rail, we're doing field service with mining, construction, aircraft maintenance. All of these are areas where we have people in the field trying to touch, repair, monitor, test, pull logs, but they don't necessarily want to do this by paper or hand anymore. Quite frankly, they don't really want to have to put USB sticks. They want this data to flow into their existing systems. They want automation of tickets. They want automations of change and part ordering. They want their systems of record just to have the right data. They don't want to have to go key it in. And then ultimately, they've got really smart people. They want to be feeding more information about their business so they can get a better understanding on the analytical side. So that's really where ClearBlade sees how we fit and add value, is the ability to pump it into these systems and ultimately work with the enterprise that you've got today. Next.
All right, thanks, Aaron. Appreciate it. I want to talk about LatentAI, right? Adaptive AI for a smarter edge. I think a lot of definition have gone into the edge. Let me talk about adaptive AI, right? We've talked a lot about AI at the edge, AI that, AI this, but AI is going to be a living being as we go through the next phase of evolution. Today we develop code, but the code doesn't sit idle, right? You're going through a continuous iterative process of improving the code, fixing bugs, and adding new features to it as you go on. AI model is going to be evolving a similar way. And can we go to the next slide, please? So what do? LatentAI is, AI engineering itself is a very, very highly complex a tooling or a resource skill set that you need. To get that to small places, right? Running models in smaller places requires a bit more engineering work and research work to do. What we do is we build tools to help AI engineers to take those models and run it on small compute environments that was never thought before. Right? AI has been around for 20, 30 years, but it never took off because compute was not available at that time. Today, compute is available, took off. But now, to do the inferencing and to run it in places, you needed to engineer it in a different way to get it there. Right? We can help. We are helping engineers build models, run it on sensors, run it on gateways, run it on-prem servers, as well as in the cloud as well. Okay. Jason, next one, please. So our tool chain, right? We've built an SDK and a platform set of tools where we can take your existing neural network model and compress it and compile it and provide a linkable binary that can be deployed through a Crosser or through a ClearBlade to the Advantech platform, where we can run the inference and provide the data backup again through ClearBlade, where it can go to different historians or action-based stuff. Right. Next slide, Jason. So this is where I want to spend a little bit more time, right? We've talked about AI everywhere, and adaptive AI is where we're hitting the nail here. You can think about a model running on a sensor that is looking for a particular information, right? Let's say in the example that we're going to be talking about, we're monitoring analog gauges, right? You can have a camera look at the entire factory floor looking for different images and stuff. The moment it identifies an analog gauge, only isolating that analog gauge alone from the frame and sending it up to the next layer to process and identify what that gauge is telling, right? What is the data that it is telling, and extracting the data out and then providing that data to the next layer to process, whether to file a ticket on it, whether to send maintenance on it, or send it to the historian to store based on the timeline, right? So this way we can enable different AI models to run at the edge continuum and actually do data filtering across the panel, right? In case of, think about your Alexa, right? Like a connected home facility. The other example that I would give is, today, the only AI model that runs on Alexa is the wake-up word, which is like, you say, hey, Alexa, or hey, Siri type of thing, it wakes it up. Everything else you say goes up to the cloud to get transcribed or inferred, and then it acts on it. Let's say tomorrow, if you can have a model for your home controls running on the Alexa device, right? Let's say it can do about 20 commands that runs locally. Turn on your TV, turn off your TV, lights, dishwasher, whatever, right? Now you start talking to Alexa or talking about vacation planning or travel. Alexa understands this and summons a travel module for AI, right? That AI model comes down to the Alexa device. So your interaction becomes seamless at that point. You're not waiting, you're not hit with the latency of going back and forth to the cloud. Now you're ready to book your tickets. Alexa can summon the booking module. The booking module can come down and it can understand the nuances about the booking process and help you right then and there. So that's what we're calling about ourselves as adaptive AI, helping you define the model. We are not subject matter experts. You define the models, but we'll help you shrink it down and run it in places that you never thought possible, right? Next slide, please. So our market strategy today, the way we are working with is we are working with a lot of semiconductor companies, including AI accelerators, digital signal processors, GPUs, and as well as x86 processors, right? So for them, we are looking at and we're building and augmenting their tool chain so that developers can bring models, shrink it using our tool, and target their particular hardware. One of the semiconductor company that we're working with, we took their 5-word wake-up model, which is like, play, pause, skip, stop type of thing. And we shrunk that model from 2 MB to 150 kilobytes. That's almost 12x in size reduction. And run it on a 4-bit processor very efficiently, right? Then the next layer on we're working with OEMs, right? Industrial IoT makers, consumer IoT, and automotives as well. In this automotive OEM use case, they want to have a very small chip doing backup camera object detection. We're able to run that on a processor similar to a Raspberry Pi, right? And running it at 30 frames per second, identifying different objects that the automotive doesn't run over. Right? Then the third layer that we are providing services to is a telco as well as edge data center and CDN providers. In this case, from a CDN perspective, CDN is the entry point into the internet. Not all devices have enough capacity or capability to run AI models. They are like old and generic hardware. So can we run AI models at the edge of the network on the CDN so you're saving cost on the backhaul to the core of the cloud and reducing latency to just 2 milliseconds? We're providing that. And then on the AI application developers, we're working with several companies there. Simple cases, mobile developers. We can help them shrink model sizes that are running in the cloud, and they can run efficiently on an Apple or an Android phone. And also we are helping certain customers in the industrial sector building MLflow pipelines where they can use us to shrink models as they're building new capabilities, right? So that's us. We are very excited, and we just recently won Startup of the Year award from IoT World. We're very excited about it from the recognition from the industry. With that, I'm done. Over to Mike.
Thanks, Jags, and congrats on that winning that Startup of the Year. So again, Mike Berryman with Advantech. I'm going to shift gears a little bit. We heard some really interesting things from the speakers before about these great technologies that can be used at the edge. And so our Advantech's role in all that is give those containers, give those applications. We're the ship that takes the container. So we're the gateway, we're the edge compute, we're the hardware that all these great solutions and also the orchestration from ZEDEDA can run on. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about connected field service and kind of the considerations you're going to have when you're deploying applications to the edge, especially as it relates to the type of gateway or edge compute hardware you may need to choose. Next slide, please. So the next slide is going to, when it comes up, basically is an architecture of Advantech Industrial IoT Group. So Advantech is a large, almost $2 billion revenue company based in Taipei, Taiwan. But we're focused, our division is Industrial IoT. We're focused on some market segments like manufacturing, machine building, energy, oil and gas, and transportation. They're kind of our major market focuses for our division. So as far as the portfolio that we offer into those market applications, starting from the bottom going up, so we do edge sensing. So we're not a sensor manufacturer, but we do all the devices that can get that sensor into some kind of digital format that you can get do your predictive analytics or your AI on, right? Also, we do gateways and I/O devices, data acquisition, all types of how do I connect to that real world sensor to pull that information in to start doing the analytics. As we go up a stage, We talk about the network connectivity. So whether it's industrial Ethernet or it's cellular routers or it's Wi-Fi or any of the wireless technologies, even fiber optic media converters. So we're a manufacturer of all those networking devices as well. And then one more layer up, the edge is different to everyone, even for us. We have many different products we call edge. Some that you would expect to see in a control panel on your machine for this connected field service. Maybe it's the touchscreen controller computer that you have on that. Or perhaps it's something that's sitting in a factory server room that needs to be a little bit rugged. So those are all the different kind of products that Advantech manufactures. Next slide, please. So I want to get across this concept of a convergence that we've seen in our customer base, asking about two different technologies, but trying to put them together. So one is the IoT gateway, and I think a lot of us are familiar with those kind of applications. Typically, you're talking to maybe it's some kind of edge controller. You got wired and wireless connections. We all know about the southbound and northbound protocols, right? You're going to talk to a PLC has a certain protocol, or some kind of sensor has a certain protocol. We need to get that. We call that gateway because we're getting that data off that device and we're pumping it up to the cloud. So you see maybe it's a machine or maybe it's a process, and then we think about, how do I secure that communication, right? So I think about secure and encrypted data. And since it's on my network, or maybe I need to be trusted, so I need to have a method of trusting that device. So that's kind of the IoT gateway world. So, but as AI start to push down to the edge, we're starting to see the need for edge compute. And edge compute, there's a little different set of requirements that we see customers asking for. They're really more curious about processing power, maybe even some GPU, even at the edge, right? Could be for AI and machine learning applications. They're talking things like, why don't you give me some local data storage? Not just pass the data through, but I need to have some local data storage so I can do some analytics over time and stored values based, maybe the machine 3 months ago was running well. Can I compare it to that golden run kind of idea? Things like video processing, which is a lot more bandwidth and a lot more need to have compute at the edge. Or data preprocessing, for things like model execution, or maybe you're doing a fast Fourier transfer for vibration. All these kind of technologies and requests for more horsepower at the edge. So we're really seeing these two segments kind of converge into one segment. It's sort of the holy grail is in the middle of this diagram. So let's go to the next slide and talk about a little bit further. So on this slide, basically, if you bear with me, I know it's a little bit busy, but there's a couple of different considerations when we're talking about this device at the edge, compute/gateway device. So let's start with the downward arrow, the southbound. This is going to get your interesting data off your machine or your process, right? And if you're lucky enough, you have an Ethernet connection. You may use Wi-Fi because you don't want to wire stuff. But it could be things like even USB or old-time serial ports, right? You need to be able to do that. Or maybe it's a CAN interface. Maybe this is a engine control unit on a generator, and to speak to the engine control unit, you got to have a CAN interface, which is pretty common in that kind of application. Or maybe something as simple as some general purpose I/O, some straight I/O that I can just read a contact or something. Perhaps it's a PoE. Maybe I'm running video cameras. I need to run out to the cameras. And we're seeing more and more even wireless on the southbound of the gateway, right? So things like a Bluetooth connectivity or a LoRa connectivity for more wireless I/O that they want to bring into the gateway or the edge compute. So those are the kind of things that we see on southbound. So now let's talk about northbound. And I think, again, most people in the IoT world know these and they're pretty familiar. Sometimes if you're on premise, sometimes your northbound is Wi-Fi because you have infrastructure, or sometimes it's Ethernet. A lot of times it's some kind of LTE or 5G that's coming out, or even it's fiber optic, or maybe even satellite, or you have a GPS for a clock sync, right? So these are all the different kinds of connections that we see northbound and southbound for a gateway. So some more considerations. Let's go to the compute considerations. So we're going off the left here. So as everybody, the challenge with gateway devices is you can deploy them and then you have this great idea for an application and you want to deploy it, but your gateway can't support it. So you have to have this thought about being future-proof. And so that's one of the things to consider. And whenever deploying an IoT application now, you got to be thinking about the future. And so you want to be able to support all these great applications that you just heard about before me. So when you look at compute hardware, there's a Raspberry Pi that everybody uses. It's the darling of the IoT world, right? Great for some applications, not great for some other applications. But you look at technologies from some ARM and Intel. There's some great technologies, and you want to be able to use those technologies where they see fit. For example, if you have an application that runs on Windows, you're going to be on x86 regardless. So you're not going to be running on an ARM in that case, right? So you need to have that capability. Another thing that we're seeing is really interesting is what NVIDIA is doing for GPU at the edge. Their Jetson platform has been very, very popular. So there's a lot of people looking at that kind of technology at the edge doing AI. So those are really interesting things to think about when you're considering this gateway/edge compute device. And then finally, there's considerations for the environment, because every connected field service, it's different kind of, whether you're in the oil and gas industry, or maybe you're doing packaging machinery, or you're doing some kind of process automation in a chemical plant, right? You have all these considerations to think about. Some of them just the standard industrial things like, is it ingress protection, is it vibration, wide temperature, right? Those are all the kinds of things you got to think about to industrialize. For example, your Raspberry Pi probably won't fit in a lot of those kind of applications because it's not built for those applications. But the other thing to think about is really more domain-specific solutions that are related to, like, oil and gas. You may need Class 1 Div 2 or ATEX certifications. In the power generation substation, there's IEC 61850. So that's really for smart grid type certification. So you can be in a smart grid application. And then finally, for transportation applications, it may need to be EN 5155 certified to be on rail, passenger rail or cargo. So those are all the kind of considerations when you're looking to deploy these applications to the edge. And the speaker even said this earlier today, one size just doesn't fit all. We all would like it to fit all, but it really doesn't. So it takes a lot of partners. It takes a lot of solutions. It takes a lot of domain expertise to put these together. So that's what I want to say from Advantech. And one thing I would add is, our partnership with ZEDEDA really allows us, for all these different platforms that Advantech or even the other partners provide, it provides the portability to go from platform to platform to be able to address all these considerations when you're selecting running your application at the edge. That's it for me.
All right, great. Well, thanks, guys, for the overview. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Good.
So we've been chatting over here on the side, just kind of questions on how these solutions come together. I think there's kind of two schools of thought I see. One is, customers want outcomes. They need solutions. They're looking for one hand to shake, and so it can be tempting to just try to go to one provider that tells you to do everything, that they can do everything. I got it all figured out. It's cool. But I've found and done this a long time, as have you guys, anyone that says they can do everything doesn't. And if you do everything, you never do one thing well. And the reason why, we're all talking, and it's not to say that, this is the only way to do this. And of course, as I said, all you guys can do different use cases, but we wanted to provide an example. And I think this is increasingly going to be the case, because what are the odds if you have a factory floor and you've got a bunch of different part suppliers hitting a factory floor, and you want to get data from your own operations into your facility, your process engineers, et cetera, quality and the like, safety, but you also want to provide some data to your part suppliers, some data to maybe third-party service providers, the mechanics that come in that you have contracted. The odds of you dictating to every person in that scenario that you're going to use this data stack only are pretty low. You're going to all use one cloud, very low. If you're vertically integrated and you have control over everybody, great, have at it. But you need a multi-cloud strategy that starts with an open edge that has flexibility. all of these providers can solve problems, I think on their own, but as I said in the chat, they will solve them with their own partnerships, whether with it's us or otherwise. I mean, everyone, has their unique value. As I had said earlier today, is like up front, it was all about people trying to own everything. And now it's, people are trying to own something and do something really well and then come together with some other folks. But it's not about not providing a total solution. It's just not about getting it from one entity. One hand to shake doesn't mean there's not a posse of people behind you, offering that solution. So anyway, so that's just something I wanted to kind of clarify. I think that's important. Let me get to the slide again. So I'll set this up and I'll kind of open it up to the group. We've got a little bit of time left to kind of have like a mini panel here, but just to make sure it's clear. So obviously, Mike talked through the Advantech hardware portfolio, like really robust line. We've really enjoyed working with the team, and the closer you get to the physical world, the more complex everything gets, and the hardware gets more complex than the software faster. As you go from the cloud to the edge, you start getting into unique certifications. If you're at the telco edge, you get into more temperature requirements, and all of a sudden you have crazy I/O that IT's never heard of, and then you need like class 1 Div 2 to be deployed in explosion area, which all of this stuff like an Advantech that offers this spectrum. It's very important to work with providers that have that capability. And then eventually you get so constrained that everything's custom. Once you get past that. It's about 256 megs of memory at the lower end of like what we'd call the compute, the CPU compute world. Now you're going embedded. Jags talked about the 2-bit, 4-bit, 8-bit models that are embedded. It's a lot more of a custom kind of how you tune it to that product world versus when you have the memory, you can start affording that abstraction. That's what ZEDEDA does. You have 256 megs memory, single node up to a small cluster. We can abstract that, and then you choose what hardware you want to use, what apps you want to use. So that's our part. And the other key is that we run both containers and virtual machines. So in the virtual machine sense, if you've got legacy applications that run on Windows, we can do that. And then, of course, you can run modernized containers. And because we're completely open with Eve from LF Edge, you have no risk of getting locked into our cloud. We think it's, you should have choice. Of course, we'd love to sell you our SaaS-based cloud, but we think it's just really important to not be locked in. And then on top of that, of course, we deploy your choice of apps. As I've been saying in the chat window, we help get secure dial tone. You have Eve landing on Advantech hardware. We're working with Advantech. We ship it out the door. You get out your mobile app as an installer. You don't need to know anything about IT. You scan a QR code. You get on your console. You get a crypto-based ID from the hardware. It gets attached to the cloud. Now you can log in through the cloud and deploy apps. So kind of imagine that setup, and then you would deploy, in this case, the ClearBlade runtime, the Crosser runtime, and then there's that kind of notion of them working with models optimized by LatentAI. So, if you guys are unfamiliar with Edge or IoT, if anyone in the audience, if it sounds convoluted, it's because it's challenging, and you want people that know what they're doing. But this example is really one around multiple data stacks sending stuff to different locations, whether it's the machine builder versus the machine operator. It could be the insurance company that wants some visibility that's got maybe massive capital investment, $5 million machine that they're insuring. I probably want to know it's being maintained properly. So anyway, so that's kind of the setup. With that, I'll turn it over to maybe Mikhail talk through a little bit about the slide in terms of we've got a couple more minutes, like in terms of how Crosser would work with LatentAI in this example.
Yeah, sure. So Crosser is really a deployment platform for any type of logic and machine learning capabilities. Crosser do not claim to come from the data science domain or from that background, but we are a very good platform for rolling out that type of logic in large scale over many edge instances, and that's why we need to work with competent people in the data science domain to be able to satisfy the needs on the customer side. And just a short comment to the ecosystem. I think that it's necessary to be able to maximize the customer value. You need to be able to provide the best components for each different functionality and combine that together, and not put that entire challenge in the lap of the customer. We as an ecosystem need to ensure that we are interoperable and able to provide an end-to-end solution that solves the customer problem.
Yeah. Cool.
So maybe, Jason, I'll add the crux of the use case here, right? What we are dealing with the customer in the industrial setting is there are a lot of analog gauges that are deployed out, and they're everywhere on the factory floor. Some are, good information to have, and some are critical information to keep the process running, right? Some are accessible, some are inaccessible. Customers are deploying two modes of sensing for this, right? One is a camera solution, and another one is an augmented reality smart glass technology. Both of them, we can run a model, an AI model, shrink it down and run it on the camera as well as on the AR headset to identify, and as a guy is walking around to isolate and identify the analog gauge themselves. Once we extract that information, extract the frame of the analog gauge, then we can send it up to an Advantech gateway with running ZEDEDA and Crosser. We can pump it out there, and I think probably ClearBlade will be the logic to send the sensor data in. We can infer what that data is, right? Whether the pressure meter is at a certain threshold or the flow meter is at a certain number. We can identify that, we can extract that information out of that image, and then we pass it up to Crosser and move on, right? This way we are able to, we don't have the ability to run anywhere in the sense of like we need a host for us, and hence this edge solution makes a lot more sense as we look at a ecosystem.
Yeah, great. Hey, Aaron and Mike, you want a couple closing words? Just in about another minute or so.
I'll be real fast. So obviously, right, so we're getting good data, we're getting this gauge information, we're beginning to understand it. But so if you think about what about the other side of that, there's a machine that actually exists that is an understanding in your factory, right? There's enterprise data. You want to take that gauge reading and map it to machine 101 with operator Frank on Tuesdays during these hours. You want to be able to move that data up to a larger edge where you might pass that off to your insurance company. You might pass that off somewhere else. You move it up again, then you want to ingress it into BigQuery and into Maximo and open a ticket in ServiceNow, right? So there's this whole life cycle of all these things have to re-engage now that we've gathered this cool IoT data. We've done this good processing to understand what we've got. Let's put it back into process. And that's where ClearBlade's tying some of those knots back into those other integrations.
And I just add one thing that Jag was saying, especially what we're seeing from the challenge with IoT was, can you instrument enough stuff? Can you spend, how much money can you spend on instrumentation to get the information you need? Two things are changing that. One is audio, one's video. That's really changing everything. So if you can have a camera look at those gauges and do all the analysis from that, that's really a game changer. So you're basically replacing the operator's eyes and ears. Those two technologies are really being a game changer, I think, in IoT and AI at the edge.
Excellent.
Great. Okay. Yeah. So I really appreciate you guys joining. I mean, I think the whole point here is that as long as you invest in kind of an open base and have some sort of secure foundation, that's obviously what we're trying to provide at ZEDEDA. Then you can kind of choose the right providers for you on top. It's not to say that these guys don't do security and all that as well, and also can offer their own solutions, turnkey. But the model here really is create that single foundation. You can use the same thing over and over again. And this whole notion of a multi-tenant edge, a lot of people don't share edge infrastructure today. It's not like workload consolidation because they don't trust that each other are going to steal their data. I don't know. I'm not going to put my workload on your box because I can see it. In the cloud, you don't know that your workload is running next to someone that might be your competitor. You just don't know unless you buy a private cluster, but whatever. At the edge, physical, I can see the box. No way are you going to touch my box. But with ZEDEDA's bare metal foundation, we can guarantee that app, the Crosser app, only talks to the LatentAI enabled model. It only sends data to this cloud. The ClearBlade app, meanwhile, can be taking data from the factory floor as well and sending it to ServiceNow. But then also we can say, hey, no, ClearBlade and Crosser, you guys exchange data. Like one's the machine builder, it's all about having that secure interchange. We're not. I mean, start small, solve simple problems first. But advanced class is this multi-tenant edge. It's this notion of ecosystems colliding. Continuous value across all the chains. So that's why we wanted to show this example. I mean, I think that it's probably not going to be the precedent, very, very near term, but it's not that far out. So really appreciate you guys joining. I mean, everyone's got a valuable part of the ecosystem.